faces in the crowd tonight. A 3rd Army veteran. Raise your hand, please. There he is back there. Please have one hand. And all the other World War II veterans, please raise your hand. Wow. Normally, for those of you who don't know, we have name tags for them all, so you can go up and say, to call them by name and say thank you for your service, etc. There's a little snafu tonight that didn't happen. So come back next month and introduce yourself to them. Thank you for the service. Follow my example, please, and turn off your cell phone. Anybody that doesn't have them need hearing enhancers? You see these little earmuff things? Anybody need one? I probably do. Okay. Can you hear me now? Last thing, is everybody who wants to get an email or a postcard announcing our meetings, getting them? Is anybody not getting one who wants one? If so, there are cards out back, they're blue on the table. Please fill it out and leave it there, and you will be so blessed with the announcements. All right, we have a few people who want to make some announcements tonight. Laura Costello.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, a plug for World War II Days coming up in Reading. Central Pennsylvania World War II Roundtable. We will be on a table, and we're going to really announce that. But May 21st, the Hershey Historical Society has a day trip to go to the National September 11th Memorial and Museum in New York City. And we will be commemorating one of the area's victims of 9/11. Hershey High School alum Michael Horrocks graduated in 1981 from Hershey High School, went on to play football at Westchester, which happens to be my alma mater, and then served in the Marines before beginning to fly for United Airlines. He was a co-pilot on United Flight 175, which was hijacked and crashed into the South Tower. He left behind 2 children and his wife and his parents. So when we're at the memorial, we will make our way to his name and pay our respects. We'll get back on the coach and head over to the Hudson River. The piers will be alive with sailors, Coast Guard, and Marines. It is Fleet Week. We have 10 seats left. I brought a couple brochures, and the deadline for registration is next Monday. So see me after the meeting if you're interested.
You have how many seats available?
10 seats left. 10 seats left. $129. Good price. You can park your car at the Hershey Historical Society in the morning. We embark at 6:45, and we should be back in Hershey between 8:30 and 9. I know it's going to be just a great day. It's going to be commemoration and celebration. So hope some of you consider going.
Thank you, Laura. Bill Jackson, our founder.
I had a call from a lovely young lady in Annville who's looking for veterans to ride in their Memorial Day parade. Now theirs is on Saturday, May 23rd, and any of you, they said veterans of all wars, not just World War II. They have vehicles arranged for you to ride in, and all you need to do is call this young lady and tell her you will be coming, and they will have reserved a space for you. I've got her phone number. The information is also out at the registration table. We will be, for those of you who are familiar with it, you'll be riding in Division 3 of the parade. The parade starts at 9, but you have to be there at 8 o'clock to get on your float. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And Miss Burton, Vietnam Roundtable.
The Vietnam Roundtable meets next Thursday down at the Vietnam Veterans Chapter Hall, 8000 Jerry Street. Next month, we're going to have Mike Groff talk. He was with the First Air Cav. And then the following month, we're going to have a Navy pilot, Jerry Zacharias, going to talk. He made over 600 carrier landings. So he was 600 for 600. So, you know, if you have a bad day, that's $5.99, don't count.
All right, thank you. One quick question, Wally, did everybody call you on time for dinner?
Yeah, I called him on this one.
And for next month, you need to be known by when? Friday, May 29th? Friday, May 29th, 9 a.m.?
Actually, I did have a few scratch. I thought I had about 6 or 8 people call me on Saturday, but that was it. Even though the deadline.
Please, the kitchen here needs to plan correctly, and call Bev on your email or on your card. It's her number. She is the dining captain, so please obey. Okay, last month in April, we talked about the advancing of the various factions of the military on Western Europe, and the vice was starting to squeeze. Let's fast forward to April 30th. Hitler and his new wife Eva Braun committed suicide in his bunker way below Berlin. She by cyanide, he by cyanide, just to make sure, also by pistol. So that was the end of that guy. Before he dies, he dictates his last will and testament, and in it, Joseph Goebbels is appointed Reich Chancellor, and Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz is appointed Reich President. Remember Dönitz and his submarines from last month did a hell of a job against us, but ultimately failed. Hitler also stipulated that on his death, his body will not be put on public display. He did not want to face a Mussolini type of experience. And so their bodies are taken by the SS from the bunker, taken outside, doused in gasoline, and burnt to a crisp. There are theories that may not have happened, but none can prove that it didn't happen, and it sounds like a pretty good theory to me. So now we get to May 1, May 1st, Berlin surrenders to the Soviets, but it wasn't official because the person who did it wasn't supposed to do it. But meanwhile, on the same day, Joseph Goebbels and his wife killed their 6 children and themselves. What the hell are these people? Meanwhile, during all this stuff that's going on for the last month, and right up till now, American troops and others were discovering and liberating concentration camps all over Eastern Europe, and there were lots of them. The big ones we've heard about, the small ones, the work camps, you couldn't begin to pronounce their names, but there were lots and lots of them. And the problem was, you eliminate these people, how do you feed them? The Russians had a problem feeding their own people, even and the Germans, when they were surrendering, we didn't have enough food to feed them. There were some who were told, yes, we'll accept your surrender, but bring your own food. Things were really tough, so just because the war was about over didn't mean it was easy. On May 2nd, the Soviet forces captured the Reichstag building and installed the Soviet flag. This officially ended the Battle of Berlin, and when German General Helmut Wheeling, commander of the Berlin defense area, and no longer bound by Goebbels' commands, unconditionally surrenders the city of Berlin to the Soviet General Vasily Choikov. Unconditional means there ain't no bargaining here. It's it. That's it. An unconditional surrender is there's no negotiation. On May 4th, Admiral Dönitz finally orders all U-boats to cease operations. The German troops in Denmark, Northern Germany, and the Netherlands surrendered to Montgomery, everybody's favorite field marshal. On May 5th, formal negotiations for Germany's surrender began in Reims, France. But lest we forget, the war in the Pacific is still raging. Kamikazes are having major successes in Okinawa, and I expect we'll talk about that a little bit in the coming months. Interesting enough, the Japanese claimed their only victims on U.S. soil when fire balloons. They had set fire balloons. Fire balloons were said to come across the ocean and land. Some landed on a Sunday school group in Bly, Oregon. Wow. May 6th. You think it's over? It isn't. German soldiers opened fire on a crowd celebrating their liberation in Amsterdam. Some people just don't get the word. May 7th, 70 years ago today, Germany surrenders unconditionally to the Allies at the Western Allied headquarters in Reims, France, at 2:41 a.m., in accordance with orders from the Vice President Karl Benitz. And tomorrow, as you know, is VE Day. The celebration begins. Okay, so much for the history. That brings us to today. Charlie Lloyd, raise your hand, please, and then stand up. He did a fabulous job of recruiting speakers for us and vetting them, and I'd like him to introduce tonight's speaker, Wally Clarke, who served in the 26th Infantry Division of Patton's 3rd Army as a Marine Gun Sergeant. So with that, Charlie, I'll turn it over to you to introduce Wally.
Thank you, Kurt. Anybody that didn't get a name tag, raise your hand. Anybody forgot the name tags, raise your hand. No, I forgot the name tags, so it's my fault. I apologize for that. I got a lot of comments on that. I already got 13 demerits. I don't need any more. We have several speakers coming up. Next month, we have I'm walking into that light. It's killing me. Sorry. Don't go to the light. Don't go to the light. I got you. Next month we have Matt Goodman coming from Allentown. He was a chief petty officer. It was a title that I don't remember, called Coxswain's Mate or something like that. He said they don't use that anymore. But he piloted the Higgins boat on 5 landings: Philippines, Okinawa, Subic Bay. I think we have some fellows that were there. And he took the Marines ashore. He'll have a very interesting story to tell us. July 2nd, we have a repeat. We have Harold Billow, who will be here, who's from Mountjoy. Harold is one of 2 survivors of the Malmedy Massacre, and he has quite a story to tell. So he'll be here in July. And then we have some candidates for August and September. Tonight we have Wally Clarke. I met Wally Clarke at Dan Mastro's meeting in Columbia. And Wally passed out books. It's a remarkable book. If you haven't seen him, come up and look at it. But in order to help the audience understand his experiences, he passed out these books. He says, I'm going to let you people look at them and then please return them. A very successful meeting. Everybody enjoyed it. And then at the end, in fact, during that meeting, he mentioned that he had a friend who was a minister in New York. And I said, I got to meet this guy. So it turns out he was a friend of my brother passed several years ago, Reverend Canon Kermit Alloy, and they apparently had a few cocktails at the country club together while he held court. Wally is a trusting fellow, once. So the books are here, but what happened was when everybody rushed up to talk to him, people left and took the books. So out of 30-some books, how many did you get back? Yeah, so they didn't return them. So the books are here, he has plenty, and I urge you to take a look at them. I've seen a lot of different books, and the maps are just remarkable. His journey, he captured throughout the entire process from France to Czechoslovakia, and he kept a daily journal. And you can see from that how detailed it is. One part, I don't know if it was Hill 209 where it was, but there was 8 machine gunners, and 5 of them were killed. So he's seen some heavy stuff. But he had a badge that said machine gunner sergeant, and I said, I never saw that rank before. What is that? He said, Charlie, if you really want left, you can give yourself any rank you want. So he called himself the sergeant machine gunner. With that, I'll turn the microphone over to Wally Clarke. Excuse me, one moment. The best thing ever happened to Wally sitting next to him, and that's his wife, Dot. Attention came on choppers.
this is what you call power when you have a microphone like this. Oh, he can turn me on. Okay. 15 pictures in my book, and Laura has put those on a slide. It's going to show them on a slide form, and maybe I can elaborate a little bit as you go on. This is Helen Patton. Back in 2004, she used to help GIs when they went back over to Europe. She was married to a German doctor, and she had articles in our history magazine. So I sent her an email. Next thing I knew, I got a short email. It said, I sent you a long email, but I lost it in cyberspace. Give me your phone number. So we gave her a phone number. She called me. We talked for about a half an hour, and we've been friends ever since. And I'm dedicating this book to her and to her grandfather, General Patton. Okay, we'll take the next one. This is the 5 guys in 1945 in Reims, France, on our way home. And on the left is Jim Logan, got the Silver Star, and then we got Rags Watkins. Rags was the only guy that wasn't a sergeant when I was made sergeant on Thanksgiving Day, 1944. And when the war ended, there was something called attrition, and he became the first sergeant of our platoon. Next to him is Dave Cobb. He was our communication corporal. He and I went to Baltimore City College together, graduated together, and ended up in the same platoon. The next one is Chick Doherty. Chick was another sergeant that he said he was pretty dumb. He re-enlisted, and he ended up in Korea. But fortunately, he was an infantry captain of a headquarters company, so he didn't see too much action. And that's me on the right-hand side. Okay. This is in Czechoslovakia when the war ended. And that's our platoon, what was left of it at the end of the war. And I got the names and so forth, and it'll be in review, but the 3 of us, Rag Watkins, Chick Doherty, Dave Cobb, and of course one was my driver. But 3 of us are still living and still corresponding. That's me on the right, I have hair then. This is a medic from Fairchance, Pennsylvania, and he was attached to a rifle platoon, which most medics are. And on November the 8th, we had a big attack, and he tended to the wounded all day long, and he was wounded himself a couple of times, and eventually he died that night at the aid station. On the bottom right-hand corner is Al Blinder. Al Blinder was an infantry platoon sergeant, and he was helping him that day. So as a result, I told Al, I said, I'm going to put your picture. No, don't put my picture next to his. I said, yeah. Al had about 5 children, he's got about 27 grandchildren. He's a Jewish boy, lives on the West Coast. He's a master bridge player, an excellent tennis player, and he had open heart surgery last year, so he said he had to give up tennis. Okay, we'll take the next one. This is the November the 8th, the front lines of the 3rd Army, and it shows all the different outfits. And my outfit was the 26th Division on the right flank. And my publisher, who was from Lancaster, he made a large up in the right-hand corner so you could see it. Now next to us was the 35th Division. Now the 35th Division fought next to us during the Lorraine campaign, also during the Battle of the Bulge. And then when I came home to New York, one of their platoon sergeants was Bob Bowman. He owned Bowman Trucking Company in New York. And he and I became very close friends. And we used to sit down and discuss things that nobody else we could talk to. We talked about the longest day. We talked about the 5-day Battle of Tanks in September 1944. All you hear about is the 4th Armored Division and the German tanks who tried to abolish it. But the 35th Division was attached to the 4th Armored Division during that time. And it was about 5 days, it was just chaos. And if you see the movie Patton, it's mentioned in there. Okay. This, you can't see too much. This is the Lorraine campaign from October to December the 12th of 1944.
Actually, this picture don't show, but it shows our regiments and the 4th Armored Division combat commands. We were all together, working together. And it went all the way up to December the 1st, and that's the day I was wounded, so then I left. And then in the middle there somewhere, there's a little town of Giebling, where the fellow got the Medal of Honor in 1994. The 1st Negro Tank Battalion to go into action in World War II was attached to our outfit. So they were with us all the way through there. And I'll mention that later on. Okay, oh, yeah. You can't see that too well. It's in the book, it shows out. What happened is, after I was wounded, I was in the hospital, and I sat down with some scratch paper and drew a map. I was kind of a historian. And I was wounded at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, went back to try to get help, get stretcher bearers and stuff because all the guys were wounded. And then I finally ended up back up helping the guys, and the artillery shells came in again, and 2 of my squad were killed. My staff sergeant lost an arm and a leg, and unfortunately I thought I was hit by one, so I survived that. But that's a map explaining that. It's about 5 pages in the book explaining the battle. But it was the Battle of Saar Union, which lasted 3 days. And it was the 9th Tactical Air Force, the 4th Armored Division, our 26th Division attacked. And the Germans had a main line of resistance there. They were going to hold it. And they're tough. It was tough. Okay. This is Luxembourg, and this is the picture showing our counterattack. Now, the counterattack started off, well, let's put it this way. I was in a hospital recuperating, and on December the 16th, I hitchhiked 10 kilometers to a little town of Verdun to get a partial pay. I got 10 kilometers, 10 francs, $10 worth of francs. 2 days later, Pat and Eisenhower, all the biggies got there to make a decision what to do about the Battle of the Bulge. I didn't even know it had started. I had nothing about it. But in the history, I went back, and our outfit was in Reeves supposedly on rest and recuperation. I think there were only 3 days when the Bulge broke out. So they were destined to go up to the Battle of Bulge, 26th Division, the 80th Division, and the 4th Armored Division. When they had that meeting on the 19th, our history, I have Pat's stuff and so forth. The 4th Armored Division had left Metz. They already left Metz, were headed to Backstone before that meeting even. And of course, at the meeting, everybody laughed at Patton because he said, I can attack in 3 days. And he did attack in 3 days. There was only one guy that listened to him, and that was Eisenhower. The interesting thing is, after the Battle of Bulge, Eisenhower never said thank you. He never thanked him for what he did in Africa either. I'm a historian. I'm really big up on a lot of this stuff. Okay, let's go. We captured Wilkes toward the end of the Battle of the Bulge. And I had this picture taken. We have, in a machine gun platoon, we have 4 squads, 4 machine guns, and 4 drivers, 4 jeeps. So that's my drivers on the left, and I'm the second one on the left, and the other guy, 2 in the middle, and 1 on the right. The guy on the right was an aviator, but he couldn't get in the Air Force. The guy on the left, I went down to Philadelphia and saw him a couple of years ago, and talked to him, looked him up on the internet. So that's just a picture of us when we recaptured Wilkes. Okay. This is something very relevant. Positions of my machine gun squad in Sarlat in France. And on the left it says A, we were on this side of the Saar River for a week. And then B, up above it, we were up there for a week. And the Germans were in the pillboxes outside. That's the Saar River, the black surface. And then the third time we were C, down in the center of Sarlat. We were in the basement of a house with a squad of A Company. And the Germans were on the other side of the street. The interesting thing is that my doctor in York, Jim Smith, was a great guy on and exercise and so forth. So after about 25 years, he was checking me out on a physical, and he said, "What's that on your back? What happened?" I said, "That's shrapnel." And he said, "Yeah, where were you?" I said, "I was in Europe." He said, "I was in Europe too, but I don't remember anything. The only thing I remember is a town called Sarlon." I said, "Jim, you were in the 65th Division." He says, "Yeah, how'd you know? They relieved us on the front lines." Now, he said, John Zimmerman was also. John Zimmerman married into the Wolf family, which are very big in Mount Wolf. One of our boys, Tom Wolf, a good friend of mine, is now governor of Pennsylvania. John Zimmerman was a corporal attached to a forward artillery observer. John ended up in the same basement where I had my machine gun squad. Those are little things that, you can't make them up. Okay. Oh, this is why we won the war. At the end of the war, I'm in the middle there. My mother sent me a white t-shirt. On the left is George Patton. No relation to the General George Patton. He was from Pulaski, Virginia, 37 years old, had 2 children. In the middle, back, is Roadblock. Now, his name is Karcheski, but he drove tractor trailers in a civilian life. And I went up to see him in Scranton afterwards because my wife lives from Wyoming. But he wouldn't drive a Jeep. I tried to get him a Jeep driver, get away from the front, No, I won't do that. He carried ammunition. He also was married, 37 years old, with 2 kids. The one on the left he was a slow learner. So we had him plan all during the war. He was a guard at company headquarters, so he wouldn't get hurt or anything. So the last couple of weeks of the war, they put him in my squad. The one on the right lower was from Alabama. He tried to write a letter home to his mother. He couldn't really read or write. The guy behind him was from Brooklyn. He was okay. He was our cook. Okay, you want to go on? Then the war ended, thank goodness. That is showing our division. We started over here in France. We crossed the Saar River 3 different times. And then we went all the way up into Fulda, up in central Germany. On April 1st, it was Easter Sunday morning. Came around here. On the right-hand side there, Roosevelt died on, I think, the 13th. But around that same time, we came across a death march, which we had never seen anything like that before. And we didn't know what it was, and then we looked ahead. The bodies were stacked up in the woods next there. And there was a whole bunch of guys standing around outside. And all of a sudden, they realized that we were U.S. Army people. So they started singing. Guess what they sang? La Marseillaise, the French national anthem. They were French prisoners of war. And they came, I studied my history, and they must have come out of the prison camp up there near there. Then we ended up in Austria. We went along the Danube River for about 100 miles. Went into Austria. And we got to Austria, we saw these white clouds. They're really funny white clouds. We couldn't understand that. And then we found out later on, it was the Alps. It was snow on the top of the Alps. And we were quite a ways away, but you could still see them. And then we went up into Czechoslovakia, and the Germans blew up a bridge in front of us. And we finally got across there, and we got into foxholes that night. And in the middle of the night, we heard hobnail boots going down the McCadam Road. And we figured, what was that? We don't know. Anyway, we woke up the next morning, and they said, well, they just surrendered. And about 200 yards in front of us, in the woods, was about a dozen Tiger tanks. So the war ended exactly when I wanted it to. Okay, is that it? Oh, no, this is a good one. This is what, we came back on a victory ship, it took about 10 days. We got on it in Marseille, France. And it was nice in the harbor. Then I got out of the harbor, and it was rough as a devil, and everybody got sick, because they were eating food they hadn't had for years. And then we got back there, and there's in the bottom, right in the middle, you can see there was a band there serenading us. And there was a guy who was in our company. Now, he'd done some bad things, so they sent him to the hospital to get cured in England. And then he went home with the Queen Mary and beat us home. And he's there. He's from Phoebus, Virginia. His name was Willie Linkus. But he was there waving at us. Hey, I'm here first. Willie Linkus on the dock. Okay. Oh, I didn't know I had that. That's the 5 of us. We used to correspond. Dave Cobb, the one standing up, he's the one who went to high school with me, retired forest ranger, went to the University of West Virginia, and we talked to each other. He said, get yourself a computer so we can send email. I said, it only cost me 3 cents a minute on the telephone. Get a computer anyhow. He said, we want to get together, we got to do it. So anyhow, I got a computer, I got on the phone, and 2 weeks later, the 5 of us met in Columbus, Ohio. And my wife was with me. Everybody, Rags on the left, he'd been married twice, and I think he had a girlfriend, but she wouldn't come along. And on the left, one chick Darnington, the other 4 of us, our wives here, we had a beautiful weekend. That was in August of 2001. It was just about a month before the big thing in New York happened. But the 3 in the middle, this guy, okay, we were going to meet again in World War II down in Washington. So Rags died about a year earlier than that. He was 80 years old. And I called Jim Logan up in Buffalo, New York. My wife and I went up, spent a weekend with them earlier. And I called him up, and his daughter answered the phone. We said we have hotel reservations and everything in Washington. She said he died last week of an aneurysm. So the 3 of us are still living, we still communicate and so forth. That's good enough for that one. Well, that's that same guys that was in 1945, yeah. We looked a little older now, don't we? In fact, in my book, I put the 3 of us still living. I have our pictures in the back of my book that was done a couple of years ago. That's it? Okay. It's a lot easier doing this. You know, putting it up there, everybody can see it. Oh, boy. My wife used to kid me all the time. If I had a ball in my hand or something, I would be happy. I played baseball. In 1946, I turned down a contract with the Brooklyn Dodgers. They wanted to pay me $100 a month. And I was making $60 a week at the B&O Railroad. There's no money in baseball then. Then I played basketball for some of the best teams in Baltimore. And then we came up to New York, and I guess I was getting pretty old. I was about 30. But I started playing golf. And that's why my wife said, as long as I had a ball, I was happy. And I won the senior championship at the Country Club of York when I was 65. And I won the super senior championship when I was 68. And then a couple of years later, I skied for about 3 hours to ski round top. Went back and played platform tennis against the Outdoor Country Club, and we won the first set, 6-0. Then I couldn't move. And I didn't know what it was. And one of the guys in my foursome, he says, oh, you need some exercise. We'll put you on get over there and get on the treadmill and so forth. After about 2 minutes, I said, that's not it. Anyhow, they took an MRI, and I had spinal stenosis. So then in 1992, I had a back operation, and that kind of slowed up all my ball playing. Then in 2008, a couple of my buddies went to Europe, and they came across a town called Bassans-le-Petit. Now, written my memoirs in Austria after World War II. We were living in a monastery in St. Florian, and I wrote it on scratch paper and all that kind of stuff. And my secretary, about 10 years later, I had my secretary type it up, and she typed it up, and I had my history book in the meantime. So she was getting all the dates, chronological dates in order for me, and she came across something. She said, guess what? Her dad was in my outfit. His name was Ray May, he was from Red Line. These coincidences are unbelievable. So anyhow, we had that, and then about 10 years later, the girl who runs the data processing unit in Dentsply, they were a big customer. I sold them all their business forms, computer form stuff. And she made up hundreds of copies of my typed up memoirs, gave them out. So when these guys took the canal trip from Nancy to Strasbourg, France, they were going along and they saw a great big sign where a guy got the Medal of Honor at Bassans-la-Petite. And they said, that's where Wally was. So they spent the whole day in the canal, the boat stopped, they took pictures and all that stuff. They came back. My next door neighbor had her PhD, Dr. Bonnie Klein at York College. She said, we'll have to publish your book now. So that's what started it. And then we found a guy in Lancaster from Melbourne, Australia originally. Came over here as a computer geek, not geek, but a computer engineer. But he ended up, he has the U.S. Historical Publishing Company now. So they said, well, we'll talk to him. And I did. And he said, okay, bring all your stuff with you. And I had gobs of stuff. I turned practically all my stuff up to the Carlisle barracks. They had a World War II room up there. But I had enough stuff that I took it over with him. And I said, now I can redraw this and I can do this. He said, you're not going to touch one thing. I'll scan everything. Everything that goes in your book is going to be original. So we talked about it, and he said, I'll work up a price for you. And about a week later, he sent me an email. And I told my wife, and my wife said, well, you could forget that. And I said, honey, I got my own IRA. So anyhow, we went ahead with it, and it cost quite a bit. I'll tell you, it cost me $6,000 to set this book up. But the guy his father was the Lindbergh of Australia, and he published his father's book on a book just like this. And everything in here is first class. So that's where we started, and it took him quite a while. We finally had it published on May 2009. Now what I'm going to do is just hit some highlights in here. A lot of it was right on there. And sitting next to my wife, there's a precious book right there. Because in the front of it, there's a picture of she and I, and it says the book is dedicated to her. Now, my publisher is a pretty smart guy. He put that in one book. He said, now you keep this on the side. That's a precious book. It's not like any others. Okay, in here you already saw the slides on the Medal of Honor. And the other guy got the Medal of Honor was a lieutenant in the 4th Armored Division. And he got his on September 27th. Our medic got it on November the 8th. And in October the 20th to the 27th, I had my machine gun on Hill 265. And this was there's a whole chapter in the back of the book explaining what happened that day. But to make it short, we had two squads of machine guns were in foxholes next to each other. One was Chick Darty, one was me. And every afternoon the Germans would drop mortars in on us. Because we were actually on a forward slope. We were occupying foxholes from before. And if the Germans came up there, you couldn't shoot them from behind the slope, you had to be on the front slope. So this one day they dropped the mortars in. And we had blankets in my foxhole. It blew the blankets up, we were in the orchard up in the trees, knocked the machine gun into the hole on top of us, but it didn't hurt me or my assistant gunner. And then the guy next to me was Chick Darty and his sergeant. And they 8mm mortar dropped in on them, broke the tripod of the machine gun. which the print took 51-pound tripod, machine gun on top of it. All of it went into the hole and landed in his lap. And naturally he tells his story today because it didn't explode. And he picked it up, and they said, don't touch live ammunition. But he picked it up and threw it out of the hole. His sergeant said, I'm going to go get some help. And we never saw him again. But that was it. There's a whole chapter on here. And that's a story as told by us and also by Dave Cobb, who was our communication corporal. He was in the area too. But that's very interesting. But the highlight of this whole chapter is we had a captain who stayed in the service, became a general, and he met a lot of German officers. And among the German officers he met was a captain. The captain was in charge of the German forces at Bassans-le-Petit doing all this action. So his story's in here too. And it's interesting because we thought they were going to kill us, and he thought we were going to kill him, you know, with artillery and everything. But it's a real personal account from both sides of that one place. But the interesting thing is, there was 2 Medal of Honors given on that one hill at 2 different times. Okay, you saw that. Oh, that's hill 265. That is quite a thing. Let's see. Now this book takes you from the day we left New York Harbor and landed in Normandy on D-Day plus 90, which September the 6th. That was the good news. And you saw that on the slide of where we went into action. The other thing was in here, there's my buddy Dave Cobb was called up to the captain before we went on the line. And the captain said, I want you to drive the Jeep. We got to go over and listen to General Patton. And he had a canned speech, more or less, everybody had heard. And there was one guy I heard it went out that was a newspaperman, so he put it down verbally, word by word. So if you look for it, you maybe find it. We couldn't put that in the book, though. But Dave said, man, was he a motivator. He said, when I came back to the squad, he said, I was ready to go to Berlin. Oh, boy. Let's see. Well, the rain campaign started in October. It was the coldest and wettest winter in 40 years. It was practically wet, and then also snow came. We used antifreeze in our machine guns. We were using water-cooled machine guns, and they were, I think, 1917. Before we went overseas, they gave us these new machine guns, and they said on the outside, not to be used outside the United States. So we knew we weren't going anywhere. And the other thing was, they were World War I machine guns. You see, we never did anything between World War I and World War II. It was only 20-some years. And the most interesting thing was we had that water-cooled machine gun, which could deliver a lot of fire, not as rapid as the Germans, and it wasn't as good. And in the rifle companies, they had what they call a BAR, Browning automatic rifle, which had about 2 or 3 men mounted, but it gave them a lot of trap. They loved that. Other than that, the riflemen had Garand, M1 Garand rifles, which were good too. But they loved that BAR. And then in the rifle companies, they had what they call a light machine gun, which is air-cooled, and they also had a 60-millimeter mortar. And in our squad thing, we had 2 machine gun squads, and we had a mortar, 81-millimeter mortar platoon, but they always were about a mile behind the front lines. And our captain never got any closer to the front lines than that 81-millimeter platoon. And I slept with my lieutenant on Hill 310 on November the 9th, I guess it was. And he finally admitted to me, he said, you know, he's just what you guys said he was all along. I won't mention it here. And 2-3 days later, he was hit by shrapnel and became a paraplegic. And but he lived till he was 80 years old. I went out to see him in 1995, visited him and his wife out in Youngstown, Ohio. He was a real good lieutenant. And then we went to lieutenants, I never did get to know any of them. And finally our platoon sergeant was an old National Guard guy. He said, okay, I'll take it. Make me a lieutenant, but I'm not going to wear the bars. So that's what happened the rest of the war. We didn't get any more lieutenants. Oh, let's see. Oh, she put that on the map about Sarlot, because that was something else. That was something else. Sorry, sorry. Oh, when I got hit 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and another one of our fellows had been hit, and a medic brought him back. He was okay. And artillery shells came in, and you can hear them coming in. You can hear them going out, you can hear them coming in. They were fired by the German tanks. And it exploded into trees, and when you're in the woods and the trees, shrapnel just goes everywhere. And I was lucky because they hit me in the back and bounced off, just took a piece of meat out of me. But we had another guy hit him in the thigh, and we had to get him out. We had no stretchers. You might have an aid man, but you don't have stretchers or anything like that. So I would say, okay, I'll go back and see if I can get some battalion stretchers and an aid man. Well, I got back about a mile, and they said, oh, they're all over in C Company. They ran in what they call bouncing Betsy's. You step on them, they come up about this way and then explode with bullets, basically trying to cut you in half. But all of the guys with stretchers were there. So I went on back further, and finally I got back to, I ran into the mortars, 3rd Battalion Mortar Platoon. They were attacking Sardinia frontal, we were going around. And we went in and ran into a couple of our guys that, from the motor platoon. So the 2 of them said, hey, it's like 3 or 4 o'clock. Come on, we got supplies. You show me the way, we'll take the Jeep, we'll take supplies up to the guys for the next day. So we got up there and we had to detour 2 or 3 times from this path through the woods. Then finally we got up there, and here's my staff sergeant and three of the other guys carried this wounded fellow. They carried him about half a mile from where he was hit. And the medic took a look at him, and he was dead. So he took him off the stretcher and started to put another guy on the stretcher. Heard shells coming in again. So we dove for the ditches. And when we finally, the guy on top of me was from Baltimore. He died in the aid station that night. Unfortunately, I wasn't wounded. I thought I wasn't. My staff sergeant was laying at the foot of my body. He lost a leg just up to the knee, was completely blown off. And we were in the same hospital, evacuation hospital, for 3 days together. He was 2 beds from me, and he had IV in his face. His arm was broken, he was in a cast, his leg was off, and so forth. And I came back from food sometime, and he whispered, he said, hey, Clarke, here was my staff sergeant. I didn't even recognize him. But he went back to the States, got back to the States to Michigan, and he sent a letter. He said, if you ever get in the hospital on one leg, don't try to corner a nurse. He still had a humor in him. But there's a guy, and a lot of people get the Medal of Honor for things, but there's a guy who did this, and nobody even knows about it. I'm probably the only guy who even knows about it. And I'm not the kind to write it up. Some lieutenant write it up. They write each other up all the time. The other thing I found out in my history and so forth was that the Army decreed that only 1 medic in every division would get a Medal of Honor. Now other guys, the 4th Armored Division got quite a few Medal of Honors. That was Patton's best Armored Division. They were always up front. And we went on the line with them, relieved them. Then we fought with them all the way through the Lorraine campaign. We fought with them through the Battle of Bulge up in Bastogne and so forth. And we fought with them after we crossed the Rhine River. So we got a taste of his best outfit. And those slides are great because it's tough to explain those things, but you put them up there, it's nice. Now, all through my book, when Bonnie Klein my next door neighbor, she said, give me all your stuff. She said, I'll set up an appointment. Go down to York College and take all your stuff with you, and my secretary will put it on tape. And at the same time, my mother gave me all the letters I wrote home to she and my sisters and brother and father, brother. And so I took those along. So she put those in chronological order and put them in italics. So anytime you read the book, you can see what the letters were, and they explained it. But that took about 3 months. We got that done. On November the 30th, I asked my brother to send me a little brownie camera, and I got it on November the 30th. And I put it in the Jeep. Of course, the next day I was wounded, so I didn't get a chance to take pictures till after the Battle of the Bulge, I guess. And I took 2 whole rolls of film not really during the battle, but in the battle area and so forth. And then, of course, we got into action for a few days, and I lost them. They were in my field jacket and fell out. By the way, I have some books here. I have 38 books with me. My publisher can get books made in Lancaster real quick, but I sell them at my cost. And what we do now, if you want a book, then I personalize every book that I have. I personalize it to you. And if you want to get it later on, just give me your name and address and send me a check for $40. These checks go for $35 because it cost me $5 to mail them. So that's the story on those. I've sold over 1,100 myself. Every time I go to the country club, we had opening day of golf the other day, and a couple of guys were talking about my book. And the other guy said, what book? Well, they worked with him at the bank. And he said, I'm a World War buff. I want one of your books. Okay. Went down to my dentist to put a thing in the other day. Girl said, oh, he said, we didn't get another one of your books. They sell them down there, 5, 6, everywhere I turn around. So I have to keep them going. Now, in the back of my book, I have a lot of things here. I put 14 items of interest. And then these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 items. Failure of our military intelligence prior to the Battle of the Bulge. Elise Delhi was a gal who went behind the British lines, behind the German lines, to get some of her stuff out of her house. She had left her house on the German side. So she was over there, she came back, she told the 28th Division, you know that Pennsylvania National Guard? 28th Division was on the line there, supposed to be rest and recuperation. Told them exactly what was going, so they took that information and sent it back up the line to headquarters from there, up to Bradley's headquarters. Bradley, they tell us that they reported, they said a German girl, and it was a girl from Luxembourg. See, we had broken the code, the Enigma code, so forth of the Germans, so we knew what was going on all the time. And yet they didn't pass that along to the front lines, to the fighting forces. And this is all documented in history books. The German Enigma code was broken by British intelligence, and all German orders were available to the Allies during this whole period of time, before and after the Bulge and during it. Oscar Koch was General Patton's intelligence officer, and he was of old school. And he figured out exactly what was going to happen at the Battle of the Bulge. Because in World War I, they went through the Ardennes. In 1890, they went through the Ardennes. And in 1940, they went through the Ardennes. That's where they went. And yet all of our brilliant West Point men didn't think about that. But Koch did. He and Patton had talked about it. So that's the reason that they were ready to go. And I can remember the guys in my outfit. They said, you know, we were on rest and recuperation. Next thing we knew, they said, pack your stuff, you're going out. And they did. They just started, they just kept walking until they ran into German forces. That's what you normally do when you attack. You have lead scouts. The infantry guys are the guys that lead. And they go out there, most of the time they get shot or something like that to start with. Then you know the Germans are there. The other thing that was interesting was the First Army called for aerial reconnaissance during the battle, the first part of the Battle of Bulge, before it broke out, actually. And this was documented, I think, in some of the movies. But they refused to let them fly any reconnaissance. I have two items here that were very significant to me. A few years ago, 2000, let's see, it's probably around 2000, the first part of the year, I got a call from this guy, and he started talking about things that I knew about, but I couldn't guess who he was. And he finally said, "This is Jim Logan." And I said, "You mean Killer Logan?" Well, what happened on Hill 490 during the Battle of Bulge, his machine gun squad started to retreat up on Hill 490, retreat to the top of the hill. The rifle company had broken. They scattered going up. The Germans been attacking since early in the morning. And Lieutenant Cosman, who used to be a sergeant, now lieutenant, he grabbed a hold of him. He's only about 5'8", a little squirt of a guy. He made him take the machine gun back down to where he fled, set it down, and he was credited for killing about 180 Germans that day. They fired that water-cooled machine gun the rest of the day. The Germans kept coming up. When I got out of the hospital, one of the other sergeants took me up there on that hill and went over the whole scene, what happened. They took 6x6 ton trucks, dozens of truckloads of German dead bodies off the hill. A lot of people were still there. Some of ours even were still there. The other thing was, on that same hill, Rags Watkins had inherited my squad after I was hit and went to the hospital. So he was given my squad in December, and he really didn't even know any of them because they had that machine gun next to where Logan's was that day. And he said he went over to talk to somebody else to check something else. The shell came in, hit a direct hit on what used to be my machine gun, destroyed that, killed the gunner and the assistant gunner, Allen and Perry. They were from West Virginia, and I made them sergeants back on Thanksgiving. Gunner, assistant gunner, because they were 19, 20 years old. They were the youngest and most ablest of the guys coming in. He didn't even know their names. And I told him who they were. And he said, I was in such a shock. He said, they told me I was standing around there trying to wipe their skin off of the machine guns. Now, he told me this on the phone. These are some of the things you won't read in books or anything. But these are some of the parts of the war that are really, really bad. Now, also, all of you guys know the atrocities inflicted by the German army. Again, you had a fellow in Malmedy fought. There's another guy from Lancaster survived Malmedy too, I think. But those are terrible things. Now, what I did. I made some other notes here. We'll have a question and answer session too. Oh, we've been on here. I go on and on, I'm sorry. Somebody said I've never at a loss for words. That happens to be my wife's heart doctor. So he said, told his teacher, he said, my dad's got a copy of Mr. Clarke's book. He says, can we have him come down and talk to us? So for the last 3 years, I've been down there talking to 100 students. We've broken into 25 classes, and last time 50. But this year I got on the internet, and I sent to them all of a copy of the machine gun that we had. There was a water cooled machine gun showing the water and all this stuff in the machine gun. Well, there's another thing about that machine gun I want to mention. Somebody asked me what was one of the most important things you did during the whole war. And there was a lot of of things that happened that affected me, but there's one thing that I was very proud of. In the States, number one, I was drafted and I went in the infantry and was trained as a medic for 3 months. And then after that, they said, hey, you've got an AGC score of 136, Army General Classification. We're going to send you to college because you're the best and the brightest. You're going to do this and do that. So they had about 150,000 of us. I went to Clarke University. Never heard of it before. My namesake. And I went up there, and then all of a sudden, it was winter of 1944. They were short of men in the infantry outfits, and they were going to invade Europe. And some guy sitting in the back room, he said, hey, I know where we can get some guys. So this Army Specialized Training Program was disbanded in March of 1944. We went and filled up all of these infantry outfits. And the history books, if you ever find the right one, I've found some of them. They said the later outfits that fought in the war fought much better because they had so many of us fighting the war. In fact, Stephen Ambrose wrote Citizen Soldier. He mentioned it in there. Okay, I'm looking for stuff here somewhere. We had at the country club, they had a Saturday or something, they're going to glorify World War II or something like that. I'm not sure what it was. But I didn't like the idea, the way it was set up. So I got a hold of the guy who happened to be just an assistant manager of some sort at the country club. I got a hold of him. I said, there's a good reason why you shouldn't be doing this. And I told him, and I wrote this down. These are the things you will not put in a book. But because you guys are so interested in World War II and so interested in what's really going on and what one guy did, I'm going to read you what I've made up. And I said, I will list some things not in my book. Please use this in confidence, as it's just for your enlightenment. Did you see a leaf clipped off inches from your nose, and nearby your lieutenant at the same time was hit in the spine and became a paraplegic? At the same time, your roommate in the AST program at Clarke University lost 10 of his squad killed by the same machine gun, all happening one afternoon, just 3 days after he lost 5 of our 7 sergeants on Hill 310 and 2 lieutenants plus 5 others in my company. Number 2, an 88 shell mortally wounded one of my men and warned me less so. I could go for help and become a target of another 88 shell, which killed another of my men and blew off the leg of my section sergeant and killed 2 other men from another company coming to help us. Number 3, did I tell you about the sergeant who inherited my squad before I came back from the hospital? On Hill 490, an 88 shell made a direct hit on my machine gun, killing my gunner and assistant gunner, both teenagers from West Virginia. And the sergeant who'd been nearby came over and in shock tried to clean the machine gun of blood and skin which was attached. Did you ever have a replacement soldier climb into the foxhole next to you before you could even meet and die by a shell which buried into his head and saved his comrade with him in a foxhole? Should I remind you that I had no feelings for this soldier and took his shovel which I had lost? Did you sit on the hill overlooking a town in France and watch a German tank destroy 5 of our tanks and their crews? And in the 90s, the sergeant in charge of these tanks was awarded the Medal of Honor for covering their retreat. My friend, retired Brigadier General Doherty, who is still living and emailing me, was with me, and the next day went down and got a Tommy gun out of one of the machines. The other interesting part of that is we saw the German tank in a barn. They opened a barn door, and these 5 light tanks just drove out in the field, and they just bore sighted all 5 of them, just killed him. Immediately, we thought we could do something because there was a tank destroyer attached to us. So we went back and grabbed the lieutenant and said, bring your tank destroyer up here, and we know where this German tank, and you can knock him out. Do you know what he told us? I can't do that. He might hit me. This is the things that go in that really grind you to this day. I mean, we could have shot him. We felt like it. There was 3 of us were sergeants on that hill. Did you ever stand guard in 12 below zero during the bulge for a replacement soldier who had gone to sleep and consider shooting him? I did. I considered it. I stood watch for him. How would you feel if you came across hundreds of POWs in the woods with stacks of dead bodies from a death march who recognized us as U.S. soldiers and burst out with the French national anthem? How can you become so calloused about the war that you only want to survive along with your men? One of the school students, Dallas tonight, she asked me that question. Did you ever feel remorseful about what was going on, what you did? As a sergeant, you're responsible for the safety of your men. 5 men in my squad, 2 of them were 37 years old with 2 children, and a wife at home, 1 mentally challenged, 1 who could not read or write, and a normal-age soldier from Brooklyn, and we won the war. Do you wonder why I always fired my machine gun? I always fired my machine gun because I told those guys to put the ammunition here and go hide somewhere. Then I told you about when the war ended. I think that's enough of my talk. I'd like to open for questions and answers.
Well, before the question and answer, Charlie probably told you we're an all volunteer organization, we don't pay our speakers, but you do
You
reward
don't.
them. We reward them.
Well, Charlie told me.
We do reward them.
Oh, no.
And for your outstanding service, your outstanding memory, and your friendship, and your willingness to, I'll give you a star that came from an American flag that flew over the United States.
Yeah, good. You know, we give this out, I belong to Lions Club, real active, downtown York Line, and we give it out, we give a little line out. Some of the speakers have a dozen of them.
Yeah.
But they're nice.
Well, I hope you enjoy it.
My wife she drinks her hot tea every morning, so she'll use it.
It holds stronger beverages as well.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
I'll remind you all, the helping committee will be at the door as you leave. Please visit them. They make all this stuff possible. So with that, it's your question and answer. Once again, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And it's going to go to chaos now.
It was my pleasure. I enjoyed it.
This is where I get my exercise. I think it's
Yeah. And if anybody wants a book, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Clarke, two-part question. Where did you do your basic training, and am I safe in assuming you were a replacement in 26th?
Where did I have my basic training? Camp Landing, Florida. And what was the second question?
And am I correct, you were a replacement in the 26th?
Did we have replacements?
I mean, were you a replacement, or?
Oh, no, I went overseas with them.
Okay.
I joined them, I didn't mention, they knocked us out of Clarke University, and they sent us, and I joined the 26th Division of Tennessee Maneuvers. We lost 22 guys on going across the Cumberland River, which was in flood stage, and the boat overturned, and off 22 of them drowned. We didn't lose anybody crossing rivers in Europe.
How many men were in your platoon when you got to Europe, and how many were left in that picture you showed?
Of our platoon?
Yes.
I know 3 of us are left. You know, we never got together after the war.
In the picture though, how many of the original that went over, how many were there, and how many were in the picture of the survivors?
Oh, most of the guys in that picture went over with us. Yeah, but we had a lot of I have at home the number, we probably had replacements about 200% out of 36 men. Rifle companies were unbelievable. They must have been replaced. See, 10% of the infantry caused 90% of all the casualties. And the rifle companies, they might lose out of 200 people, they might be fighting with 35, 40 guys. That's all that was left.
Anybody else?
We've heard so much about General Patton since World War II. We've read about him, we've seen him in motion pictures, but I want to ask you, as a member of his Third Army, what were yours and your men's feelings about General Patton?
Well, I'll tell you this. If you sit on your can and wait for something to happen, you're going to get killed. And the only thing you can do is move forward. The best thing we found out, the faster you move forward on the attack, the better off you were, because the artillery would be shooting behind you and so forth. And he was noted for that. I mean, he used to preach. He said, "You don't take any shovels." But that was a lot of baloney too, because every night, every time we stopped, we'd start digging a hole. And that was his motto. And if you go back to his history, of course, the big thing he thought was discipline. Of course, you understand, he was a vet of World War I, and he wasn't back in piping. He was on the front lines. He was seriously wounded in World War I, and war was his whole thing. He knew more about war and campaigns and stuff than any all the generals put together. And see, his family and Eisenhower's family, they lived together at Fort Myers outside of Washington during the 20s. They got to know each other real well. And of course, Patton, he was such an egotist. He was a horseman. He was in the Olympics in 1936 in the Pentagon. Did 5 things. He was a great horseman. He was a great marksman and everything else. But he could drive you crazy too. But the thing is, you have to understand what he did. You know, when in North Africa, I had a first cousin who was in the First Armored Division, and he was a forward artillery observer. And the thing when Patton took over the second, not the second, after Caspian Pass, the biggest thing in the Patton movie, so it was discipline, you know. You gotta have your helmet, this and that. No, I didn't believe in that stuff. And my outfit was an old National Guard outfit. We didn't believe in that stuff. We didn't do close order drill. But when after the war was over, we had some colonel came in and said, "You're gonna do this?" We said, "Baloney. We're not doing any of that stuff." And, but when three of us took off from the replacement depot, and we said to ourselves, we're on our way back to the front lines. Why don't we just head for Paris? So we got to Nancy, France. Guess what was in Nancy, France? Patton's headquarters. Everybody had shiny helmets, neckties, and all this kind of stuff. And then we figured, well, we'll get some coffee and donuts from the cost. They charged us for it. We had to dig for a couple pennies to get some coffee and donuts. And we all had, well, one guy was from the 10th Armored. The guy here was from the 10th Armored. He was from the 10th Armored Division, and he took off on his own. Now, I know one combat command was in Bastogne, and the other 2 combat commands were down at Eckernach. But, and the other fellow was in, I think, the 4th Infantry Division. They'd been in Iceland for like 3 years, and then there came an invasion on D-Day, and he was in the hospital for some, not a wound or anything, something else, but the 3 of us there. And we still had our old crusty fatigue jackets on. They didn't give us new clothes in the hospital. Yeah, we liked it. Usually I have a friend of mine who's a golfer, and he was with him in North Africa, and he hated his guts. But his granddaughters, you know, his son was quite an athlete. His son saw more action than he did. And my wife and I, we belong to the Patton Foundation here in the United States. We were charter members of that, and Helen founded it and so forth.
Sergeant Clarke, when Yankee Division moved out from Zarlaten about the second week of March, I think it was in 45, and they moved up towards Zarburg, below Trier. Did your company take part of that movement to?
You know, I have hearing aids that the VA gave me, but repeat what he said to me.
Did your company, Company D, after the Yankee Division was done in Zarlaten, did you move into Zarburg further up?
Oh, yeah, well, what happened is we were up in, we were in Zarlaten after the Bulge. We relieved the 95th Division there. And then the 65th relieved us, and we went back up to Saarburg. And then we crossed the Saar River at Saarburg and headed to the Rhine. So we crossed the Saar Union, Saarlaten, and Saarburg. Yeah.
Thank you. Your remarks are fantastic because it puts everything into perspective. But I think a lot of us do not understand the complexity and the weight of that machine gun. You were in a heavy weapons platoon, right?
Yes.
You're carrying a water-cooled machine gun. How much did the machine gun weigh?
How much what?
How much did the machine gun weigh?
Oh, the machine gun weighed 36, the gun weighed 36 pounds, the tripod weighed 51 pounds, but we put antifreeze in the machine gun, so it weighed about 41 pounds.
And what happened when that overheated?
What?
What happened when the barrel, when the water wouldn't stay in there, it would start to evaporate, right? What did you do?
Let me elaborate a little bit. I'll give you a good story. On Hill 310, we had 8 machine guns. The 1st platoon and the 2nd platoon. Each had 4 machine guns. Another thing you have to understand, everything was, General Marshall put everything in triangular. So there was 3 rifle companies. 1 was in reserve and 2 were on attack. We had 2 machine gun platoons. Guess what? We were attached to one of those 2. So we were always never in reserve. Okay. Now, on Hill 310, what you mentioned, brought up, we were firing 8 machine guns. And the Germans were in this woods up on Hill 310, we were trying to break out. The one sergeant 1st platoon lost his finger, and his daughter's a nurse up at Hershey Hospital. Another one, Matt Bellucci, lost his whole chin. Our machine gun was fired, all of a sudden it going, the barrel burned out. Now what do you do? At that time, I was assistant gunner. It was my job. I had to crawl out, disassemble the machine gun, first of all take the antifreeze out, put it in a bucket, then disassemble it, and they have a big springer there. And then put it back, get another barrel, put the barrel in there and assemble it. And I did that in about 5 minutes.
Under fire.
Under heavy fire. I think that was the most important thing I did all during the war. Because, you know, you're trained to do that, but God, I did it. You know,
But the remarkable thing is that machine gun was not an offensive weapon. Once you got into position, whether they were attacking or defending, you were more or less stuck there.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So I mean, when you displaced forward, that was an effort in itself.
Yeah.
And as a sergeant, would you be supporting one platoon?
Well, what we had is we had a section sergeant. Now we had 2 squad sergeants and a section sergeant. Now his job was to place the guns wherever they were needed. And of course we had a lieutenant. They had 2 sections and 2 squads. You had to work with the rifle company to see where you're needed. But basically what we used for support attacks to start, and then every night basically to set up in a defensive position. And because I figured that to get me, especially going to Bulge, we were in about 2 feet of snow and so forth. I had that, and I had a pistol, and I had a grease gun, and I had a machine gun. And during the rest of the war, every time we stopped or somewhere, we had a guy that checked your organization. What are you supposed to have? Oh, you're supposed to have an M1 Garand rifle. So he'd give me a rifle, and I laid it up against a tree, and that's where I left it. Most of us had, Sergeant, most of us had.
But I think too, you made the point that the machine guns would draw the fire, both from the enemy machine gun, and they would zero in their mortars on you, right?
Yeah, oh yeah, they knew where you were. You're right.
Well, I'm welcome to a question over here. Are there any of your veterans here also served under Patton? Did anybody else here serve under Patton?
And he survived.
Yeah.
Good for you.
You know him?
I don't know about that even now. I talked to somebody up there.
Please introduce yourself to Wally when you come down. Who's the question over here, was there? Yes.
How soon after the war was over did they take away your ammunition and lock everything up? And
Good question. You know, I don't ever remember. I know this. Right after the war ended, our regimental headquarters were unloading ammunition from one place to the other, and it exploded and killed 6 guys. Day after the war ended. I don't think we ever carried live ammunition after that. We guarded, I guess we did, we were guarding 50,000 German soldiers in a camp, but we weren't going to shoot them. If we needed something, we called them down. They sent out carpenters, electricians. I had a valet, a guy with me, gained about 50 pounds in 1 month, and but we were friends. So we had nothing against a German soldier, an ordinary guy.
Okay, anybody else? Oh, over there, hang on.
Did you ever come against any troops such as the Fallschirmjägers or against, like any of the Waffen SS, or were you facing mainly up against Wehrmacht soldiers?
Did you ever run into the German special troops like the SS or the Fallschirmjägers, or were you just against Wehrmacht soldiers mostly?
We didn't know what we ran into. We went on a line against the 11th Panzer Division, which has seen action against the Russians, and we're a top-notch outfit. And we found out pretty soon what their modus operandi was. They were really smart. They didn't put a whole bunch of guys on the line. They would have people here and there. They used to run active patrols at night, which we were not used to. They'd come in and capture a couple of guys and so forth and take off. Well, what they did is they had groups of people. If they saw an attack or something happen, that group would move to defend that position. You know, they didn't try to put a line of guys. That's what we did. We had a long line. You know, about every 100 yards you have a machine gun or something like that. But they were so worldly wise in how to fight a war. We learned from them.
Okay then, what can I say but thank you so much. Please come down. Please come down and introduce yourself to Wally, buy a book, whatever.